Please go to Finnegans Wake Notes.net for a full explanation of the text, and please don't forget to hit the like button.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're the podcast that plunges into the deepest sources and brings back the essential knowledge you need.
And today, wow, we are really diving deep. We're tackling this incredibly complex, almost legendary document, this letter embedded within, well, one of the toughest reads out there.
Absolutely. It's found between pages 114 and 119 of the source text we're examining. And honestly, calling it just a document doesn't quite cut it. It's more like a playground for interpretation.
That's a good way to put it. Our sources take us on this wild ride, starting with really granular stuff, forensic details like tea stains, paper type.
Right, the physical object itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, boom, it spirals out into psychoanalysis, social critique, philosophy. It's dizzying.
So our mission today, what we want to unpack for you, is what all these different ways of reading forensic, psychological, political, Viconian, what they actually tell us. Not just about this specific letter, maybe, but about how we even know things. About authorship itself, about just the sheer overload of information or interpretation we all face.
And what's really fascinating, and maybe a bit frustrating for some, is how the analysis is presented. It's sequential, like line by line almost.
Yeah.
But each new interpretation seems to just demolish the previous one. It's like thesis, antithesis, synthesis, all hitting you at once. The text is fighting back, you could say.
Actively resisting being pinned down.
Precisely. So, okay, let's start where the sources start, with the supposedly objective material facts, or what look like facts at first glance.
Right. So we put on our, literary detective hats, page 114, line 21 or so. What's this thing actually made of? We get these descriptions. Sand, Pounce powder, Drunkard paper, or soft rag.
And right away, you hit a snag, don't you? Drunkard paper. I mean, it's not really a standard term.
Yeah.
Turns out it likely refers to Papier Buvard in French blotting paper, which, immediately brings in ideas of absorption, maybe spillage, maybe even, well, drinking, excess.
Interesting. So the paper itself hints at themes. And Pounce powder.
Yeah, Pounce was used historically, either to prep parchment, make it less greasy for ink, or sometimes sprinkled on top to dry the ink faster, prevent smudging. Okay. It suggests maybe some effort was made, but maybe a clumsy effort, like trying to tidy up a mess, perhaps. The very materials feel a bit unstable, ruined and repaired.
And then almost immediately, the analysis jumps to this really specific deduction about the writer's life. It's very Sherlock Holmes, based on physical traces and this sudden burst of Albanian words.
That's the really striking part, isn't it? The sudden concentration. In a work known for scattering languages everywhere, having so many Albanian words clustered together, Odi for room, Qiri for candle, Raki brandy, Bukë bread, Motër sister.
It feels very intentional.
It has to be. And the picture it paints is, well, pretty specific. Poor. Maybe a cold room soft day is hinted at. Someone drinking cheap, strong brandy Raki, perhaps with a sister present. Eating a simple meal darka dasheen. It evokes this sort of Bohemian, maybe pre-domestic artist's life.
The visual details are great, too. The Qiri spluttered on the one carriage like a single sputtering candle on the only chair in the room, carriage being Albanian for chair.
Right. It really builds this atmosphere of low-life squalor, almost. Maybe an artist struggling alone. And then there's the mention of eggs foos.
And the sources connect that to painting.
Yeah, possibly. A subtle nod to egg tempera, a technique painters used. It's a clever, almost forensic reconstruction based purely on these linguistic fragments and imagined smears.
It feels quite convincing for a moment.
It does, until the tea stain throws a massive spanner in the works.
Ah, the class contradiction. This is where the rug gets pulled, right? Around line 114.29, the tea time stained terminal is highlighted. It's called a thumbprint made mark, like a trademark and a date mark.
The crucial clue. But look at the dating they deduce. It was written both before and after the Battle of the Boyne, 1690.
Which tells you absolutely nothing useful.
Yeah, exactly. It mocks the whole idea of precise dating. But the bigger problem, the real contradiction, is the type of tea.
Scalding souchong, line 115.04.
Souchong. That's not just any tea. That's a specific, rather expensive, smoky black tea.
Okay.
So how does that fit with the image of the poor artist in the cold room, swilling cheap brandy by the light of a sputtering candle? It doesn't.
It completely clashes. The Bohemian poverty versus the implied luxury of souchong tea, or even the waxen drops mentioned elsewhere, suggesting a finer candle.
Precisely. So you have to ask, why build up one picture just to immediately contradict it with another detail?
Is it deliberate? to show that this kind of forensic deduction based on tiny clues, it's flawed, unreliable.
That seems to be the point, doesn't it? The objective facts, when you gather enough of them, they start canceling each other out. You can't be both the impoverished Bohemian and the person casually brewing high-end tea.
Yeah.
It forces you to question the method.
And they throw in other little details like the writer chewing a clove or coffin nail, a cigarette maybe, masking the brandy smell, or just another low habit. It keeps adding layers.
Layers of contradiction. So if the physical evidence leads to a dead end, what about the signature? Surely that identifies the author.
But then they hit you with the anti-forensic argument. Around 115.07. Why bother signing, it asks, when every word, letter, pen stroke, paper space is a perfect signature of its own?
Now that is a fascinating turn. It shifts completely from looking at the physical object to looking through it to the person behind it.
The argument is that the writing is the person.
Essentially, yes. That your unique personal touch, habits of full or undress, movements, your very being, is embedded in the text more deeply and truly than any formal signature, or even your choice of footwear, as the text oddly mentions.
So the body writes itself, the text is the fingerprint.
Makes the whole quest for a name seem. Well, beside the point, if forensic analysis fails and the signature is irrelevant, where can we possibly look next for meaning?
Well, if the outside world of facts is contradictory, maybe we need to look inside, at the mind, because the next section takes a radical turn inward.
Radically inward, yes. The analysis completely abandons the physical evidence and starts digging for subliminal giveaways. We're moving from the lab bench to the analyst's couch, so to speak.
And it gets pretty intense pretty fast. The first reference point is Tiberias. Why start there?
It's brilliantly layered, as always. Tiberias, the city, was a major center of Jewish learning, famous for the Masoretic text, for meticulous textual scholarship, the pointing, the vowel marks, careful analysis.
Okay, scholarship,
But the name immediately connects to the Roman Emperor Tiberius. And the text doesn't shy away from what he was infamous for, incestuous salacity among gerontophiles, lovers of the old.
wow. So right away, careful textual study is linked or maybe contaminated by ideas of sexual deviance, specifically involving age and power dynamics. The tenderloin passion that's referencing the rumors about his time on Capri. Pederasty.
Exactly. That specific phrase points to those rumors of depravity, particularly with older men and younger partners. It's a disturbing tone, linking the act of interpretation itself to potentially repressed, unsavory desires.
And this dark link then fuels a whole psychoanalytic reading of the letter's content, focusing on this alleged encounter, a usual case of spoons, involving a young woman.
Yes, described as a prostituta in urba, a prostitute in bud, basically somersaulting off her bicycle.
That image, the bicycle, it feels very turn of the century, doesn't it? Like those racy postcards, maybe. Lillian Russell on her bike. A symbol of emerging female freedom, but also provocation.
Precisely. It evokes that era's anxieties and fascinations around female sexuality and independence. And who was her partner in this supposed scene? The curate.
Another loaded term. Priest assistant, confessor figure.
But also, crucially, Dublin slang for a barman. Someone who brings strong waters, alcohol again, and the text zeroes in on the main entrance of Curate's perpetual soutane suit.
Which is not subtle.
Not subtle at all. A clear, vulgar reference to the fly of his trousers, linking the religious figure directly to sexual availability or threat.
And the climax of this reading is the girl's supposed question, which gets twisted into a confession. Why have you been so Grace-Amaling, and where were you chased me, child?
Right. The analyst, according to this interpretation, doesn't hear a question about where she was physically. They hear chased as chased, who chased you, who mauled you.
And so Grace-Amaling gets read almost like an accusation from the authority figure, the so wider mentioned nearby, implying you opened your legs wider.
It's read as a deeply uncomfortable accusatory exchange disguised as solicitousness. The confession becomes a site of trauma, possibly inflicted or exacerbated by the authority figure meant to receive it. Language itself becomes suspect.
But then the text seems to turn on the interpreters themselves. There's this attack on the grisly old sickos.
Yes, this is a really crucial self-reflexive moment. Sickos, clearly psychoanalysts, playing on Freud and Jung and easily Freud, they're painted as these almost lecherous old men.
Poirier.
Exactly. Exploiting the fantasies and traumas of young women, on Alice's, like Alice in Wonderland perhaps, for their own titillation. The analysts become complicit, like abusive father figures themselves, getting a thrill from the very material they claim to be interpreting objectively.
So if the source material itself critiques the psychoanalytic method it's using, how seriously are we supposed to take this reading? Is it exposing the flaws in that kind of interpretation?
I think it has to be. It immediately follows up by complicating the father figure, saying that father in such virgated contexts, those phallic rod-like contexts, is not always that undemonstrative relative who settles our hash bill.
Meaning the father is both the provider, the one who pays the bills.
And potentially the source of threat, the seducer, the authority figure who might abuse his power. The psychoanalytic setup, this reading suggests, might just replicate that dangerous dynamic.
It's weaving psychology and power together, and then it gets even denser, bringing in Vico through legal terms near the end of the section. The Nerathan nympholept with a priapic urge for congress with agnates before cognates. Can you unpack that for us?
Okay, yeah, that's a heavy lift. So neurasthenia and nympholept suggests someone neurotic, maybe sexually obsessed. Priapic urge is obviously a strong sexual drive. The key is agnates before cognates.
Right, Vico in Roman law.
Exactly. Vico studied the evolution of law. Agnates are relatives through the male line, only representing the old, strict patriarchal structure. Cognates include relations through the female line, a later development.
So wanting congress with agnates before cognates means...
It links this raw, possibly transgressive sexual urge directly to the most ancient male-dominated legal and kinship structures. The psychological trauma isn't just personal, it's rooted in, or mirrors, millennia of patriarchal power structures. Sex, law, and history all coil together.
Incredible. So we've gone from contradictory physical clues to this deep dive into repressed desires structured by ancient law. The same few pages containing both. Where can it possibly go next?
Well, having plumbed the depths of the individual psyche, the analysis zooms back out, way out to the societal and political level.
Okay, so a complete shift in scale. The letter isn't personal anymore, it's political. A social document.
Precisely. It's reread entirely through a Marxist, or at least a revolutionary lens. The source even invents this fictional pamphlet title, Shouting Up of Bolshevism, to frame it.
Right, and it mentions using Aesopian language. What exactly is that, for listeners who might not know?
Aesopian language, named after Aesop's fables, is basically a way of writing in code, using simple stories or seemingly innocent language to convey hidden, often subversive, political messages. It was famously used by revolutionaries, like the early Bolsheviks, to get past the censors.
So you need a key to unlock the real meaning.
And the text provides one. It explicitly lays out the code for us.
Let's see. Father Michael's the old regime. Margaret is social revolution. Cakes, party funds. Dear thank you, national gratitude.
So take a simple, maybe slightly odd phrase from the letter, like, Father Michael thanks Margaret for the cakes. Apply the code.
And it becomes, the old regime thanks the social revolution for the party funds.
Whoa! Totally different meaning, right? Suddenly, this personal note is a cynical commentary on power and money changing hands during a revolution. The whole document transforms into this coded analysis of political struggle, the red time of the White Terror.
And it grounds this reading in real historical figures and events, too. Spartacus is mentioned.
The ultimate slave revolt hero, huge in communist mythology. Mentioned intercellular, hinting at communist cells.
And that reference to the froggy Jew.
Yeah, that's jarring language, obviously, but the sources confirm it points directly to Alfred Dreyfus.
The Dreyfus affair in France.
Exactly. Which was this massive political scandal that galvanized the left across Europe, exposing the corruption and anti-Semitism of the establishment. So the letter suddenly isn't just about Ireland, it's plugged into international socialist and revolutionary currents.
And there's specific Irish echoes, too, right? The foggy dew.
The famous Easter Rising ballad, plus talk of turning coats, betrayal, and this line about battle. From down swords the sea merged the old Outh guns. It strongly evokes imagery of the 1916 Dublin Rebellion.
So personal trauma in the last section, political revolution in this one. But then it loops back to the prostitute and the curate scene again.
It does. It can't let go of these motifs. But now they're recontextualized. The prostitute parks herself in the fornix near a Makeson wall.
Okay, fornix, you said that means arch, but also brothel.
Right. And the Makeson wall is likely the magazine wall in Phoenix Park, Dublin, a real, very public place, notorious as a spot for soliciting. So the sin is happening right out in the open near a military structure.
And the curate bringing strong waters.
Now, explicitly glossed as Gingin, the barman again. So the scene is simultaneously sexual, public, political, and linked to intoxication. The layers just keep accumulating.
It feels like they're trying to weave everything together. Then there's this bit about reverse engineering, a story about heartbreak from the letter fragments with wedding cakes.
Yeah, it's another interpretively. The beautiful presence of waiting cates, interpreted as wedding cakes, supposedly makes Milk Mike, this week perhaps, Shem-like figure.
Punch Hell's hate into his twin Nikki. Nikki being the Sean-like rival.
That's the reading. News of the wedding triggers this violent outburst from the rejected figure towards his twin or rival. It's trying to build a coherent emotional narrative out of the chaos.
And the source even suggests the physical manuscript, maybe holes or tears in the paper, could be the basis for interpreting this punching action.
Right, connecting the interpretation back to the physical object again, but in a completely symbolic way. The meaning is derived from the damage almost.
Okay, so we've had forensic facts that contradict, psychoanalytic readings that critique themselves, and now this political social allegory. Where does this leave us regarding language itself, if it can be twisted into all these shapes?
That's exactly the question the section ends on. It zooms right out to the philosophy of language, questioning its very limits. It poses these two extreme scenarios.
Scenario 1, what if the language of intimacy, the lingo gasped between kick sheets, sex talk basically, was used by public officials, metaphysicians, church wardens?
Their practice, their authority, their function would just evaporate. Society needs a certain level of formality, of linguistic separation to function.
Okay, makes sense. Scenario 2, what if the opposite happened? What if incredibly complex academic language, Pythagorean sesquipedalia, long scholarly words, the language of the panepistemian or universal knowledge?
What if that language was grunted and gromwelled by furtive couples in private moments?
The text claims the human race would end. Why?
It's extreme, obviously, but the point seems to be about balance. Too much obscurity, too much abstraction detached from basic human life is sterile. It leads nowhere. Too much base reality with no higher thought or structure is also disastrous.
So we need both the high and the low language kept in their proper spheres for society and maybe even the species to survive.
That seems to be the stark warning. An economy of language is essential. And this reflection on the essential, perhaps cyclical nature of language and society leads directly into the next major framework.
Right. So after pushing language to its limits, the analysis elevates the whole thing. It frames the letter not just as a product of one-timer interpretation, but as part of an eternal repeating cycle. It starts with that very liturgical-sounding phrase.
So hath been love, tists and will be, till wears and tears and ages. It sounds like world without end, amen, but with a crucial difference.
The wears and tears and ages, decay is built in.
Exactly. It immediately invokes Giambattista Vico's theory of history, the corsia recursi, the cycles and returns. History repeats, but it also runs down, wears out, before starting again. It's grounded in imperfection.
And this Viconian structure is made explicit, isn't it, with the 4 elements and the 4 ages?
First, the elements are listed. Yeah. Feuer, German for fire, aria, air, Jordan, Scandinavian for earth, water, universal building blocks.
Then the stages of Vico's cycle. A good clap, a foremarriage, a bad wake, tell hell's well. How does that map onto Vico?
Okay, a good clap, that's thunder, representing the age of gods, where divine auspices rule. A foremarriage, the age of heroes, defined by aristocratic families and marriage rights. A bad wake, the age of men, characterized by democracy, reason, but also decay and death.
And tell hell's well.
That's the ricorso. The return, the cyclical renewal, often chaotic, guided by divine providence. Hell's well suggests the cycle restarts from the bottom. So the story contained in the letter isn't unique. It's just one instance of this universal pattern.
And they bring in that children's song, the Michael Finnegan rhyme, as the perfect example.
Yes. He grew whiskers on his chin again. She plucked them out, but they'd grown in again. It's the simplest possible illustration of eternal recurrence. You can't stop the cycle. It just begins again, begins again.
It's a bit bleak, but also kind of comforting in its predictability. The text then connects this to the human condition, that famous French proverb.
Ah, yes, the tragedy of youth and age. If youth but knew, and if age but could. Rendered here as, Jeunesse, she saved. Ah-ho, and you lone he pooved. Ho-ho.
Youth has the energy, but not the knowledge. Age has the knowledge, but not the energy.
That gap, that fundamental mismatch is what keeps the cycle turning, perhaps. It's the old stoliolum. The same old story, repeated forever, because we can never quite get it right.
And this universal story isn't limited by language, apparently. It's told in polyglottal, in each auxiliary neutral idiom.
Right, it lists all these ways of communicating. Artificial languages created for universal understanding, like idiom neutral or Volapük, maybe. Coded languages like Shelta, the Irish traveler's cant. Sign language, sort of mutics. Even the language of flowers, flora lingua.
The point being, the core human drama transcends any single code.
That seems to be it. The same fundamental story plays out everywhere, in every tongue or system of signs. And then, rather surprisingly, it connects this timeless theme to a 1920s Broadway musical.
No, Nanette, why bring that in?
It's a brilliant anchor in popular culture. It mentions Hi-Ho Harry, that's Harry Frazee, the producer.
The guy who sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees to finance the show.
The very same.
Okay.
So this massively popular, seemingly lighthearted musical is immediately linked to this infamous moment in American sports history, financial dealing, maybe even betrayal, the curse of the Bambino, and all that.
And the song Tea for Two is evoked. Soof Soof blows her peaties up and a clay pot wet for thee.
Yeah, that line suggests making tea, blowing on the peat fire, the cozy domestic ideal. But the phrase, clay pot wet for thee, also carries this sexual charge, arousal.
So the simple domestic fantasy represented by the song is already undercut by the financial scandal behind the show and hinted sexual undertones.
Exactly. It shows the Viconian cycle working even in modern pop culture. The dream of simple happiness, Tea for Two, is built on complex, perhaps shady foundations, selling Babe Ruth, and tinged with base desires. And it inevitably leads towards, well, ruin.
Which the text then follows explicitly. Talk of biliousness, alcoholism again, and mixed racings, suggesting social decline or confusion.
The narrative travels, mirroring historical migrations. It mentions Peter Stuyvesant in New Amsterdam, the founding of New York. Then jumps to Paoli's in Hamburg, a notorious red light district, where the Poles, French for hens, slang for prostitutes, are found.
And it ends with this figure whose downfall is linked to alcohol. Rum smelt his end for him.
It paints this picture of the stories scattering across the globe, through migration, through vice, through drink. The same patterns of desire, betrayal, and decay found in the core document are playing out everywhere across centuries.
So, despite all this change, all this history, natural selections, the text says the original letter, the epistola, somehow survives.
Yes, it has tumbled down to us fresh and made it all ours like an old cup on tea. It's ancient, battered, fallen, tumbled, yet somehow still fresh, and constantly available, like a cup of tea you can pour anytime. Ruined and immediate, simultaneously.
Okay, so after that huge sweep through Viconian history and global ruin, we come back finally to the document itself. And how do we verify it? The text starts talking about fortune-telling.
Right. Capnomancy, divination by smoke, infusionism, reading tea leaves. We're back to the tea stain again. But now it's not a forensic clue or a class marker. It's a source of prophecy. It highlights the ambiguity.
And this leads to the core paradox of the whole analysis. The sources acknowledge we have irremovable doubts as to the whole sense of the lot. We can't be sure what any of it really means.
Every interpretation we've seen has been partial, contradictory. Yet despite these doubts, we are told we must accept the holus bolus authoritativeness of the document.
Holus bolus, like all at once, the whole thing.
Yeah. The simple view, the text suggests, is just to accept it. There you are, and there it is. Someone, some definite entity, even a made-up silly name like Coccolaneus or Galatorus, cock and bull story, wrote it. It exists. It's a fact.
That feels like a bit of a cop-out after everything we've been through.
Well, it is immediately undercut. That simple certainty that there it is dismissed as being only all in his eye. It's a superficial view.
For one who deeper thinks, as the text puts it.
Exactly. The deeper thinker understands that true certainty is impossible. And the reason. The fundamental nature of reality itself. The chaosmos.
Chaosmos, not cosmos. Order and chaos combined. This feels like the ultimate takeaway.
It really is. The text states, quite profoundly, that every person, place, and thing in the chaosmos of Ali anyway, connected with the gobbledy-dumb Turkery, was moving and changing every part of the time.
So it's not just that our interpretations change. Everything involved in the letter's creation and existence was itself in flux.
Constantly. The traveling inkhorn, the inkpot itself wasn't stable. The hare and turtle pen and paper suggesting authorship was sometimes fast, sometimes slow, maybe inconsistent, like in Aesop's fable.
And crucially, the minds involved. The intermisunderstanding minds of the anti-collaborators, plural, and they were misunderstanding each other.
Yes. It wasn't a single author with a clear vision. It was a messy, collective, potentially conflicted process, and even the words themselves were unstable.
How so?
The text calls them variously inflected, differently pronounced, otherwise spelled, changeably meaning vocable script signs. The very building blocks of meaning are shifting.
So if the tools, the people, the language, the context, If everything was constantly changing during its creation and transmission, then seeking one single stable meaning is futile.
That seems to be the inescapable conclusion. The document isn't a fixed point. It's a record of flux, a manifestation of the chaosmos. That's why all the previous attempts at definitive interpretation, forensic, psychoanalytic, political, were bound to contradict each other. They were trying to freeze something that's inherently fluid.
But it doesn't end in despair, does it? The text insists it's not a miseffectual riot of blots and blurs. It only looks as like it is, damn it.
Right. It might look like a total mess, but it's not just a mess. There's something valuable there, even in its damaged, chaotic state.
We should actually be thankful, it says, to even have this written on with dried ink scrap of paper at all.
Given how much history loses, how much gets destroyed or plundered, the mere survival of this fragment is something remarkable. Its value isn't in its clarity, but in its existence as a trace, a relic of that chaosmos.
And the final instruction to us, the readers, cling to it as with drowning hands. And that famous phrase, tear it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. Tear it up in frustration or keep turning the pages.
Yeah.
The choice is yours. But there's a hint of hope. We should cling to it, hoping that by the light of philosophy, a love of wisdom, or maybe love of light.
Things might become clearer.
Maybe, but when? Within the next quarrel of an hour.
Quarrel of an hour.
Not quarter. No. It suggests clarity won't come from quiet consensus, but from ongoing debate, argument, intellectual struggle. The quarrel itself might be what sheds light, but we have to keep engaging, keep holding on, because the alternative implicitly is worse. As it says, there is a limit to all things, so this will never do. Giving up is not an option.
Wow. What a journey. We started trying to identify the paper and ink like forensic scientists, then became amateur psychoanalysts finding repressed trauma, then political decoders finding revolution, then philosophers contemplating eternal recurrence.
Only to land on this idea of universal instability, the chaosmos, where certainty just dissolves.
Yeah. The search for that single, definitive author or meaning seems almost beside the point by the end. The real takeaway feels like appreciating the complexity, the struggle itself.
I think so, and it leads to a really interesting final thought. If the text itself, the ink, the paper, the words, the minds behind it, is always changing, always in flux, then maybe the most important author isn't the original writer, whoever that was, lost in the chaosmos. Maybe the crucial act of authorship now belongs to you, the reader, the one who engages with this scrap, wrestles with its contradictions, participates in that quarrel.
So the closing question for you listening might be this. Is the ultimate goal to finally pin down the meaning, to find that definitive signature? Or is it more valuable, maybe more true to the text itself, to simply be grateful for this chaotic, challenging, beautiful fragment we're left with, and to embrace the ongoing process of trying to make sense of it? Tear it or leave it?
A question to keep quarreling with, perhaps.
Indeed. Thank you for diving deep with us into this truly mind-bending analysis. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.